Welcome to Tell This Story, the podcast that redefines what it means to thrive after a life of service. I'm Doug White, a veteran, retired first responder, and the author of Hiding in Plain Sight, the truth about trauma, service, and the way forward. This isn't just a podcast about service, it's about what comes next. It's about the conversations we've avoided, the silence that strained our relationships, and the healing we didn't know was possible. Through unscripted, real conversations with veterans, first responders, spouses, and thought leaders, we explore what it means to become whole, to be the person we are always meant to be. Hiding in Plain Sight just isn't my memoir, because this was just never my story. It's an apology letter for the damage done, a love letter to the woman who stayed, and a map for anyone trying to find their way home. So whether you're still wearing uniform, carrying the weight of service, or loving someone who is, this space is for you. It's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. Tell the Story is proudly brought to you by Polestar Coffee, veteran-owned and operated craft-roasted coffee, fueling the brave with the finest blends, crafted for those who push boundaries every day. Learn more about Polestar Coffee at polestarcoffee.com. Use the code THISSTORY at checkout and receive 10% off your order. And, for a limited time, spend more than $50 and you'll receive a copy of Hiding in Plain Sight. Quantities are limited, so act fast. If you're here, hit follow, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Let's grow stronger than before, together. Today, I'm very excited to bring this next guest in, John Kelly. John Kelly is a nationally recognized speaker and life coach, and he's the host of the Law Enforcement Life Coach podcast. After serving 30 years down in South Florida, John turned his lens inward. He confronted addiction, infidelity, and emotional wounds that nearly ended his life. His book, Surviving Self-Inflicted Wounds, A Deputy's Life of Redemption, is a no-holds-barred guide to reclaiming purpose, identity, and hope in the wake of personal struggles. Through raw storytelling and direct coaching, John helps law enforcement professionals become better spouses, leaders, and human beings. John, welcome to Tell This Story. John Kelly, how are you doing today, buddy?
Look, man, a lot better now that I'm talking to you. How about that? Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to having an official conversation, man. We have so many that aren't. It's nice to have this memorialized.
Yeah, no, man, it is. And I want to get into all of that. But first, I recognize something this morning.
What you got?
The 30th of last month, just 3 days ago now, was your 3-year anniversary of launching the Law Enforcement Life Coach podcast.
I did not know that. And
also the 3-year anniversary of your book, Surviving Self-Inflicted Wounds, the 3-year anniversary of its pre-launch.
Dude, I got to pay more attention, man. I did not know that.
Come on, bro. You got to keep up with this shit. You're making me look like a stalker.
I know. No, that's cool, man. You know what? In a blink of an eye, 3 years.
Yeah.
Goes
by quick.
It certainly does. I wouldn't even thought that.
Well, you're killing it, man. 3 years later, you got your own dry wick shirts that are branded and everything with color flags.
Got to have American flag. Yeah, you got to have an American flag on your shirt, man.
You got it all, buddy.
Fucking communist. So,
yeah, for our listeners, you heard the wonderful bio of John, and he is every one of those things and so much more. But John and I were introduced by a mutual phone call person, an acquaintance, and I get this call from this dude. First, it was a LinkedIn thing, and he's like, "Hey, man, you got time for a call?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll get on a call." Still trying to figure out what get on a call means in this space. So I get on a call with him. He's like, "Hey, man, there's this guy, down south of you. His name's John Kelly. You got to reach out to this guy." So we get this introduction, and you and I connect.
Yeah, man.
And that first call we got, I told you, I was like, "Look, man, I'm new in this space. I'm trying to figure out my way." Everybody I speak to, with the exception of there was like 2 people at that point, Atlas Altman, who's not in the first responder space, he's a veteran, and then Jason Palomera, Living Blue, and those 2 guys, without exception, have been like, I call them drive-by mentors, guys who just show up and are pouring into people because they just want to see them succeed. For nothing
That's what they do.
98% of the other people that I run into, "Hey, bro, let me 10X you. I want to hear about your mission. This is wonderful. And this and this and this. Hire me as your coach. Buy my course. give me 18 grand and you're going to level up. All of
Yeah.
these things. And I'm just like, bro, first of all, cops and vets, we're suspicious of everyone. Everyone wants something. They're full of shit. What is it
Yeah,
you
no
want from
doubt.
me now? We're always
Yeah.
looking for the angle. But when I got on the phone with you or got on the Zoom call with you and we
Yeah.
started talking, I was like, dude, this guy's the real deal, man. You took, God, it was more than an hour, that first conversation. We've had several since of just
Yeah.
bullshit. I even called you one night and was like, hey, bro, I'm feeling this. I'm checking my math. Where am I at on this? Am I off base? And you're like, brother, come on. Oh, come on. Just being John Kelly. And you've expected nothing in return. You've been a gentleman and just continue to pour into my cup with your knowledge and where you're at, man. You're doing exactly what it is that you say you're going to do as a law enforcement life coach. So thank you for being a gentleman in this space.
Man, listen,
No,
Doug, it's my pleasure.
You're pounding down the tall grass with some heavy footsteps, man. You're blazing a path for the rest of us, and it's awesome.
I'm trying, bro. I appreciate that. That's very generous and gracious for you to say. But listen, I have the muzzle off, Doug. Like I'm not. I can be me. I can be me in a way that adds value to people's lives and not be me and detract. So they say timing is everything. The 58-year-old John Kelly knows who he is and knows clearly what the mission is. And the mission's not me. Like I'm done. I'm done. The mission now is to elevate, to empower our brothers and sisters, man, even guys that have gone through a whole career who still don't see the blessings that were given and bestowed upon them, right? Because, man, everything's perspective. And what lens do you decide to look at your situation through? And so I've got this lens, man. I got the spotting scope, and it had shit all over it, man, and I couldn't see through it for a really long time. But man, it is as crystal clear as it's ever been. And I think that not sharing that clarity, I think there's a moral obligation to do so. And so,
Yeah.
what benefit am I to another human being if I'm not sharing what I've learned? Like I feel like I stole the test, man. Like somebody put the carbon copy of the test in the trash barrel, and I was in detention emptying trash barrels, and I'm like, this is tomorrow's history test. Wait a minute. Let me make some copies of this and get it to my friends, That's what it's like, man. It's like I figured out a few things that are gonna add value to your life, and then indirectly add value to everybody that you come in contact with. So yeah, man, I thank you for that. But yeah, I'm just doing my thing, man. And it's just a really special, neat time in not only in my life, but I think in our lives. Like, I think we're in a really special place where we can really impact a culture and be part of that change. I mean, I hope that's not speaking naively, but that's what I believe, man.
No, not at all, man. And it's one of the first things that we talked about where you're like, hey, bro, why are you doing this?
Right.
Well, like I said, and you agreed. And I was like, man, you go through all of these things. You have a moral obligation. And I love this, 58-year-old John Kelly. Okay, you're old, but you really dated yourself. Like, I got the carbon copy.
Yeah, man.
Like, bro, nobody out there listening to this remembers carbon copy.
Like, what is he talking about?
If you know what a carbon copy is, your back hurts when you wake up in the morning.
Oh, yeah, man. Well, it does hurt. So I guess it works.
But, over 30 years working in Broward, I mean, you did everything. You did everything. And you finished on a motorcycle? Bro, what is that?
Yeah. I had the best. You know what was great? Like, listen, this is just so everybody's clear on my stance. Like this, there's people, man. You'll never come out of this the same way. Well, you're not fucking supposed to, man. Tell me one job that you do for 30 years where you're the same when you're the same person the day you started and the day you finish. If you're the same, then you did something wrong, man. But it doesn't need to be a negative, man. The impact, listen, it ebbs and flows, man. It ebbs and flows. So 30 years, oh my God. Yeah, Broward, it's a shit show. But guess what? I was so blessed. Every 5 years, Doug, every 5 years, when I started to get that, oh man, this isn't fun. Whenever that, oh man, I don't know about an opportunity came along. Maybe it was a transfer that I didn't want, but it was an opportunity. Road patrol, FTO, detective, apprehension canine handler in the 90s in South Florida. Getting that Ernest Hemingway quote, certainly there's no hunting like the hunting of a man.
Yeah.
And those who have hunted armed men long enough and like it, never care for anything else. I mean, we were living it, man. Sergeant, training division, and then motors. Like every 5 years, I reinvigorated. I was like, I couldn't wait to go to work. Right. And it was just it was a interesting run. I made it harder than it needed to be, admittedly. Right. I mean, suspended 3 times, investigated by the FBI for civil rights violations. And,
you can argue with the manner in which things were done, but you can't argue with the results. The job always got done.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Don't tell me something needs to get done and then hold me accountable to how it gets done. It's going to get done. In hindsight, they would have rathered a different way, a different approach, but hey, the job got done. And I work with some great people, Doug. You always hear horror stories about leadership. Yeah, there were some real winners, man, over 30 years, but man, did I work for some good bosses, some guys that got it, that came up through the ranks, that didn't forget what it was like to have a newborn at home and to, not want to be at work and be there. And, I was very fortunate that I worked with some great people that understood the humanity part of being a cop. Right. And, so just blessed all the way around, man.
I always did that in a leadership position. I always remembered where I'd come from. And, I remember what it was like with the newborns at home. I wanted to be at home. And I would always do my best to give that to others. But I never did that for myself. So I want to talk about, and we're going to be shifting all over the place because we're just having a conversation.
Of course, man.
Self-inflicted wounds, surviving self-inflicted wounds. One of the things you talk about in your book, and it's fantastic, man. It is a deep dive in the shit we do wrong, owning everything and coming out the other end bruised, scarred, but better.
I think so.
Yeah. So one of the things you talk about is self-care. So, I mean, I've heard you say this 100 times, but you're new to my podcast. So, self-care, what does self-care look like for John Kelly? Why is that so important for us as responders and veterans and honestly as human beings?
I think we get confused. For the longest time, I thought self-care was taking care of others.
The words don't match there.
No, they don't. But I thought that's what it was. That is, if I was doing for others, that was my job. And you do that until you can't. You do that for time period X until the wheels start falling off the proverbial, self-care train. And so the other part of that, Doug, is, I challenge anyone to call me on this. We get into this profession because it allows us to fix people, situations, It allows us to be consumed with others' problems. Like we get called all the time to fix other people and other situations. And as long as we're fixing, it's a noble endeavor that it keeps us from ever fixing ourselves. It keeps us from ever having to look in the mirror and deal with our own personal dysfunction. And so, throw me in the middle of a neighborhood where gunfire is going off and bodies are on scene, and it's the best. I'll figure it out, right? Have me address a relationship issue at home with no gunfire and just be a better father or a husband. Well, I got to go back to work, man.
Yeah.
They need me there. I can't. That's the real work. And so what ends up happening is you get rewarded at work, you get accolades at work, you're appreciated at work until you're not. And those are all the magnets that draw you away from your family, because actually being a good human being is a hell of a lot harder than being a good cop. You be a good cop with your eyes closed. Listen, if I always say this, like if you've been doing this job for over a year and you're still struggling, like do something else, man. Be a firefighter, right? Easiest job in the world, right? It really is not a difficult job. It's got its challenges. It can be dangerous, but it's not difficult. The difficulty is being a good human being, man. The difficulty is being a good spouse, being a good parent, truly being a good partner, being willing to have tough conversations that might end a relationship, right? Or do we just kind of, whatever, man? Right? So all these things, Doug, were self-care meant in the past taking care of others. And then it wasn't until very late in my career that I realized that nobody is coming to save me. Nobody gives a shit about me. They really, if I don't make myself a priority, who is going to? And that doesn't have to come at the detriment to other people in my circle. But there's a pecking order. I need to do this, this, and this for me. And then, and some of these things that I do, right? Simultaneously, I'm also taking care of another. Like my spending time with Nicole is necessary for me, but it's also strengthening that bond and relationship with her at the same time. Right. So, self-care doesn't have to be this silo of isolation where don't talk to me for 6 hours. I'm in my self-care mode. No, it's about weaving and integrating throughout your day, throughout your life, the things that your soul needs, the things that your mind needs. And when you can do that seamlessly throughout the day, and everyone in your circle becomes a benefit of you in that self-care mode, that's amazing. Like, because we can also take it to an extreme where, I've got a buddy who likes to cycle. Well, he's on that friggin' bike. It's a one-seater, man, and he's gone. Right? And so, but this is his thing. But it's bordering on excessive to the point where nobody else is involved with that. Yeah. So there's a balance that needs to be achieved. But, ideally for John Kelly, self-care is about prioritizing the things that I know I need to do every day. And while doing that, incorporating the people that I love. And so and then it becomes this journey, right, of support, caring by all involved. Yeah. And it's not this thing where I think sometimes when people hear self-care, they think isolation. Like I need to be off over here away. Self-care for me is also going for a walk with Nicole. Self-care, is sitting in the living room reading a book, but being in the same room with family. Um, Working out every day. It's the different things that you do. Um, it's the people that I intentionally decide to associate with. That's a form of self-care,
Absolutely.
right? So yeah, sometimes you got to scrape some barnacles off the hull. And when you do that, you don't realize that that is a form of self-love, self-care.
Yeah. It
If it's
is.
not adding value to my life, not monetary, if it's not emotionally adding value to my life, then it needs to be removed. And there's nothing
Absolutely.
wrong with you. See, but we don't, I don't want to hurt somebody's. You know what, man? Nobody wants to hurt people's feelings, but sometimes, if it's more than a fly at the restaurant that occasionally lands on the taco, um, it's got to go. It's time to change. Time to change venues. And so,
Why not?
self-care is a lot of different things, man. But the one thing that it's not, I think, that I want the listener to understand is it's not isolation.
Yeah, I think, it's a bit of a misnomer when you talk about self-care that, yes, helping other people selfishly fills me. And I remember several times in my career, and one that sticks in my head, I was a young corporal and I was coordinating school security. It was after Sandy Hook. So all elementary schools and middle schools got security. And we didn't have the Guardian program like we have here in Florida now. So we were getting deputies to do extra hours and overtime and all this stuff. And I thought to myself, man, this is the easiest job in the world because we're there. We have kindergartners to fifth graders, the entire demographic of people who love cops.
Right, right.
And I'm standing there and all I'm getting is high fives and leg hugs and smiles and cards and thank yous and sharing candy. And I mean, bro, I was like, this is wonderful. I'm getting time and a half, but this is wonderful. It's like, man, I would do this for free. I get hugs and high fives from people who love me.
Yeah, nobody's
So
swearing at me, and
exactly.
yeah,
So, I mean, sometimes you're doing things for others and it does fill you, but the actual self-care that you're talking about and that you explained was taking care of yourself. And I have to go back in my own past, especially when you mentioned your buddy, the cycler. Um, not knowing them, but being told that exercise is going to help me with all the things I was dealing with. Years and years ago, I started triathlon,
wow,
and part of that is riding a bike. And a quick ride is 20 miles.
there's nothing
Long,
quick about 20 miles, brother.
yeah, it is 54 minutes to an hour.
Okay, well,
Um, so you got to knock that out. But then again, if you're doing sprint triathlons, that's fine. 20 milers, that'll set your legs. You just keep doing that all week. But when you start doing the half irons, the Olympic distance and full iron distances, your long rides could be 90 to 115, 120 miles. So that's an all day thing. So I would do those things on my days off alone.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
those are long rides. Let me tell you something, man. 6 or 7 hours on a bicycle, that's not self care because all you're doing is ruminating in your thoughts. So growing even more, um, I learned that, the whole wake up early, get things done for yourself. That's one thing. Mindfulness, yoga, whatever it is you have to do for you before the house wakes up. But I love what you said by incorporating the ones that you love,
Can I
because
touch off?
that's fantastic. Yeah.
I just got Nicole taking golf lessons.
I was going to bring that up, man.
Yeah,
Stop being
man.
the
Oh,
host.
no, I'm excited because you know what? I was like, I don't want to spend 4 hours away from you unnecessarily. Like, would you try this? Try this golf? Like, she's like, I don't even know what I go, right. Well, you got no bad habits. We'll get you some lessons. She had her first lesson. She's like, that was a lot of fun. I'm like, great. Right. Like, let's see let's just go out and go to the driving range and we'll go, do this and do that. And it's just, I'm telling you, man, there was a time that I would be involved in activities so I wouldn't be with her. Right. And you go, what a shit thing to say, man. Uh huh. Yep. There were times that I would, involve myself in self-care activities. And it's just
Like you said,
the
that's the hard thing, though.
yeah, yeah,
Talking about those things, and why have a conversation with Mrs. Kelly if it's gonna lead, or it could lead to something that you've done wrong? It's easier just to go to the gunfight,
yeah. Oh
you
yeah,
know?
no,
You said it. That's why we do it.
yeah.
It was the easy way.
It most certainly was, and it's just and we do all that under the guise of providing for our families.
That's yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
listen, I'm out here busting my ass working 60, 70 hours a week. You think I want to be here?
Yes.
There's no
You know,
place else I'd rather be, quite frankly, because if I'm out there with my buddies doing whatever the hell it is we want to do, or I can be addressing real issues at home that I'm not.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll be with my buddies, making time and a half, uh, you know, having a good old time with the boys. But yeah, man, it's a and a lot of that is just maturity, right? Growing, understanding that like that lifestyle's not sustainable. I'm
No.
like, well, I mean,
Well,
what
you and I know that.
right? And what happens is you don't know that until sometimes it's too late. You go, oh, I actually have to have tough conversations with my wife.
Yeah.
How do I do that? Because no one's ever showed me, or no one's ever really told me the importance. I had a thing, and if can I keep running on this, brother?
Well,
Um,
this is your time.
my so my the lens that Nicole looked at our life through was different than the lens that I looked through. I looked at a situation saying, because I love her, I am not going to have a difficult conversation that could result in us getting into a fight. Because I love her, I'm not going to talk. Her lens was 180-degree. Her lens was, because I love you, I can't let this go. Because I love you, we have to have this conversation. Two diametrically opposed philosophies on conflict. And and I just said, like, I wanted to cry when she said that, because that's real love. I didn't have real love. I don't even know what the fuck that was, that I was doing. It was just avoiding, diverting, refusing to acknowledge reality. I mean, the list can go on and on. But I just thought that is like, and that is the same philosophy that we need to apply when we have difficult conversations with our friends. Love somebody enough to have a difficult conversation with them that may result in them no longer being your friend. Love them that much to have that conversation. And, once she framed that for me, that put a lot of things in perspective, Doug. Like, um, we fail each other horribly because we're unwilling, man. We're unwilling to truly love each other. And what does that look like? It's, for me, I had a lot of people enabling that thought they were supporting, right? Because support would have been having a tough conversation. And so, it's just amazing how when we open our minds, like everybody says, like, one of my little catchphrases, like, know that you don't know. But deep down inside, we think we know. Like, we think we know because we're supposed to know. But once you really just can get out of that overly confident, know it all to a fault mentality, and just be like, well, what's Doug talking about here? Let me enter this conversation truly open to whatever he's saying. And I bet you I'll learn something. If you can do that, you're going to grow.
Yeah.
You're going to be the beneficiary of some wisdom there. But getting to that point where you're like, love yourself, but you're an idiot. Embrace the idiot side of you and go, you know what, man? I'm pretty good at some things, but this is really out of my wheelhouse. Let me listen. Let me shut my mouth and just listen and be like a sponge, man. Absorb all this free, wisdom and life lessons, right?
Well, once you get to that point, man, and it's unfortunate, you and I, and a lot of people who are going to be listening to this mess up a lot of stuff before they realize that. We're hard learners. We find out the hard way of things we should have done a different way. We write books about it because
Right.
you can fill books with the shit that we messed up.
Yeah.
But when you finally do and you start having those conversations and, talking, that doesn't help anything. Bullshit. Open, honest, thoughtful, attentive conversations with the people who love you the most are the most rewarding, fulfilling, life-changing things you can do. And they're not always hard conversations. If you start off with, hey, can we talk? Already you're putting me on my heels. But if it's just
Yeah.
like, hey, it's taco night. Hey, I was thinking about this, while you're stirring up the meat. That's how conversations should be happening, and be ready for those and just engage in those, man. I have found that it's been fantastic. And before we go any further, John, I have to say this. I'm not uncomfortable, but I am uncomfortable with you referring to Mrs. Kelly as Nicole. I know that's her name, but you always refer to her when you're with me as Mrs. Kelly.
Mrs. Kelly.
So I don't want to be too familiar to call her Nicole. So I'm going to keep referring to her as Mrs. Kelly.
Refer to her however you'd like. She's a big girl, man.
I'm kidding
Oh
with
my
you.
God. I know. People have come up to me, because when I was in training, my family would inevitably work their way into a presentation, and I always prefer, Brianna and Mrs. Kelly. And I can't tell you how many people at work, actually, you're Mrs. Kelly. We've heard about you for 12 years, and it's kind of funny. When I present, I talk about, Mrs. Kelly and my Nicole. And I was at Cops in Orlando presenting a couple years ago. And my story. I talk about, and when I was done, I had a line of people wanting to meet Mrs. Kelly. And I says, she's here. I said, so if you see me walking around with the smoke show of a woman, that's Mrs. Kelly. Make sure you stop and say, Doug, we're walking. I don't know where the hell we were coming
Kelly?
In from dinner. A little gaggle of people that was like, they looked at me and they were like, is that? I go, that's Mrs. Kelly. I mean, she was surrounded. You would have thought that she was signing autographs or something. But I mean, that's people get to know Mrs. Kelly.
Well, it's
through
fantastic.
My storytelling.
It's fantastic. And I've had the majority of the podcasts that I've been on, either before we start, if somebody's read the book and then they're interviewing me, or after the podcast, like, can we meet Michelle? We would love to meet. We want to meet this person. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, one day when she's ready, you certainly
Yeah.
will. But you are at 33 years now.
Well, we've known each other for 33. We've just had our 30th.
Okay. Still, yeah. Michelle and I are having our this July, our 25th.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, no. So 30 years, bro. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's not always been easy for either one of us. And say it's the profession, say it's life, say it's us. But yeah, those things can be difficult. There's a trick, and I can't distill it down to a trick. I can tell you that.
It's not one thing, man. You know what? I take that back. Doug. It's the one thing. Yeah. Well, it's too late, man. It's too late because it already happened for you. It happened for you already. And what people don't understand is that when you say I do, when you get married, you got to marry your best friend. And it doesn't seem possible to know that you're attracted to them, you're right, because what's the courtship process? A couple years maybe? It's not typically not a really long time, but I'll say this, you need to see that person, good times and bad. You need to see that person at their worst and still love them. And they need to see you at your worst, or relatively speaking, at your worst. And what ends up happening is we marry people based on the now,
Yeah.
and with imperfect information. Like, we've only seen them when have had money, have been employed, and aren't suffering from any addiction. Like, well, no shit. No wonder why everything's great. You guys have been on a honeymoon for 2 years, right? And so what ends up happening is when it gets tough, when there's a detour from ideal, a lot of people don't want to stick around for that unpleasantness, man. Because that's when your character gets tested. And so, but if you marry your best friend, they're your best friend.
Yeah.
Best friends don't leave you. They, by definition, they are with you through it all. And so, quite simply, man, I married my best friend.
Yeah. Michelle has outlasted the majority of my best friends.
Right. I mean, I've got friends from high school, but Nicole is still my best friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
No,
And so,
absolutely.
I think that if you can do that, if you can find that, if you can find somebody, this is going to sound crazy too. Like, her parents have been together for 60 years. 60 years. 60 years. That's an example to be set.
Yeah.
That, hey, and he was a cop too. I mean, so she ended up having a front row seat for what a relationship looked like with a first responder, with her mom and dad. And so she knows things aren't always going to be great. She knows that it ebbs and flows, and that there are going to be challenges. And I think that early on in our relationship, we had some things before we got married, and she knew I was around uh, I wasn't going anywhere. And, I think that's probably a missing component, because it seems like when we do have challenges, when a relationship has challenges, I think we've made it really easy to walk away. We've made it socially acceptable, um, convenient, and it's almost like, um, not that you should stay in a abusive relationship. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that, man, but I know people that, like, I don't like the way you breathe at night. Like, I'm done. Like, oh, wait, what happened? While you're sleeping, I'm done. I've had enough of it. You wake up and your bags are packed, and you're like, oh, that's what it took. Like,
I got a
I
buddy
can,
that's like that. And I mess with him about it
yeah,
almost every opportunity I get.
yeah,
And it's just that.
yeah. I think that's and that's, and so with that comes, so one, find your best friend, but then if something doesn't work out with somebody, that's not the end, right? It's an opportunity to get it right the next time. And but what that requires is you changing, you doing something different, um, you growing, you taking lessons from that, and then improving upon the version of you that you need to be. Um, sometimes our friends, it takes them 2 or 3 times, to. I had one guy, he's like 4 times. I'm like, bro, when are you gonna figure out, man, that these are really, lovely women, man. You're the dysfunction in the relationship, like,
Yeah.
and so,
I
everybody
worked
gets a
for
good laugh.
I worked for a chief master sergeant one time, and that's when I was on active duty, and he's been married 4 times. I was like, Chief, why? Why do you keep doing this? And it was funny because when I was on active duty the first time around, very young, the whole um, get married because she smiled at me thing. And I did that. I went through it. It's in the book, whatever. But when I was having issues with, hey, what do I do about this? And I went to go see the chief, and it never dawned on me until now the irony of asking a man who's on his fourth marriage about, being young and married. But I
Yeah.
was like, Chief, why do you keep getting married? He's like, yeah, White, what I like to do is every 5 years, I like to meet somebody who's really pretty, who I can't
Oh,
stand, and just give her half my shit. And
that's
I was like,
hysterical.
wow,
There you
you
go,
are
man.
broken.
He's got it figured out. He's got the
Yeah.
secret sauce right
Yeah.
there.
That's it. Hey, this is stale. Get out.
Yeah.
Take this shit with you, which I need a
Yeah.
new couch
That's
anyway.
a new
But
bedroom set. It's like my fifth one.
I mean, yeah, I was like,
Oh
I
my
don't
God.
understand that. But
That's
hey,
funny.
switching to the book, man.
Yeah.
I know the books are incredible. They're powerful, and once we put our story out there, it's for everyone. But I
Yeah.
got to ask you, Surviving Self-Inflicted Wounds. Where did that title come from?
Everything that happened to me was of my making, Doug. Everything. See, and that was the epiphany. Like,
And that's powerful too, buddy.
oh
That's
my
powerful.
God.
Owning your shit is powerful.
I am like if I'm the reason why, then I'm the fix, man. See, that's what I preach. When I start off, I go, listen, I'm coming to you today, and I'm bringing you a gift, man, and it's a mirror, right? It's a mirror, and some of you are gonna absolutely hate this gift, right? You're gonna do everything in your power not to look in it. Some of you are gonna be okay, oddly enough. With looking in the mirror, you're going to see some things that you're not overly pleased with, but nothing catastrophic. A minor tweak here or there, a good reminder on what you need to be doing. I said, the beauty of you being the problem is you're the fix. Nobody else. You don't, and that's and that, to my point, we spend an inordinate amount of time searching, looking for the answer.
Walk past the mirror.
No, stop. You're wasting time because the answer is literally right in front of you. It's you. Um, and once you can embrace that, you're the reason why your life's shit right now. You are
Yeah.
100%
You're
I don't care
responsible
what
for it,
has
responsible
happened.
to fix it.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have always had the responsibility to respond, not react to what's going on. You control that. And so um you make that decision. And once you realize that, once you embrace that, then you're responsible for your life and how listen, you don't have you can wake up every day, feel like shit, and you know and wish the day was over and bitch and moan. You can do that. Plenty of people live like that. Go to jobs that they hate, or in relationships with people that they don't love. You can continue down that road, or you can start owning your shit and taking real substantive steps to changing your life. Like that's completely on you. And,
Absolutely.
and this is the problem. We think somebody's out there that's going to do that for us.
No.
And it's
Nobody's coming to save us, man.
no,
It's up to
no,
you.
and so that surviving self-inflicted wounds, um, alcoholic, addict, adulterer. I'll stop with the A's. You know, um, I did that. Those were my decisions. Nobody, nobody told me to get shit faced and try to drive my car into work. Uh, you know, nobody told me to step out on the coal. Nobody told me to abuse steroids to the point uh, of near death. No, all decisions I made. And so if I made them, I can unmake them. I can chart a different course. Um, and so that's the title of the book wasn't anything, Doug, that I was scratching my head over. I said, I said, what has my life been?
A series of self-inflicted wounds.
A series of self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah.
And my life now is I like to think that I'm trying to live a life of redemption, right? That I am every day becoming a better version of me than I was the day before. Constant, never-ending self-improvement. And if I commit to that, my wife laughs every day. She doesn't cry. If I commit to that, my friends embrace me because I'm adding value to their lives. If I commit to that, my daughter comes into my office and puts her head on my shoulder and asks me a question. If I commit to that, constant, never-ending self-improvement, because if I'm that guy now, everybody in my circle benefits immensely from that. That makes sense?
Absolutely, man. And if you're doing that, for yourself, I mean that's I didn't come to this conclusion recently, but I've been thinking about it a lot more. That people talk about resilience, okay, and I understand resilience is the concept of returning to normal or bouncing back. But I think through perseverance and the things that we experience through life, people in general experience through life, like you said earlier, you change. You're expected to change. I don't believe that first responders and veterans or people who live a life of service, truly live a life of service, can expect to ever go back. I think that we are building each trauma, each event, each lesson learned, each self-inflicted wound that we survive is building us to be the person we were always meant to be. I think that is the path that we're on. And I think that's the answer, man. It just always moving forward, not looking for the next thing, but being better in the place that you're in now.
Yeah, man.
And I
Living
never
in the
did that
moment, being
until
intentional about today.
you have to be present. And that's something that I never was. But,
Right.
back to the book, what was the hardest chapter for you to write? I mean, I know going through all of that and just be sitting with this pile of what seems to be insurmountable issues and problems. A lot of that stuff's hard. What was the hardest for you
Great
to write?
question. Great question. I grew up in Boston. My dad's an Irish, hardworking dude, alcoholic. There was no doubt that that was going to be my path. When there are no consequences for drinking too much when you're a young man, like I started in like middle school. I mean, just fucking what it was, man.
Good Irish boy.
Well, that's what it was. And um, when I mean never any consequences, like who parked the car last night? Like, can you get it off the front lawn? I'm like when you're an alcoholic, how do you tell your kid, don't drink and drive? It's silly, right? So talking about my alcoholism and that piece of cake, bro. Um, my addiction was took a close second. But my stepping out on Nicole was, when I mean to tell you, it's the thing I almost killed myself over. And so it's when you want to own something. See, there's a difference between like owning, oh, you're an alcoholic. All right, well, fucking don't be. Stop. Make a decision.
There's a difference between owning and atoning.
Yeah. And when you hurt somebody, see, this is the thing. We have normalized and minimized adultery in society where
There's TV shows about it.
fucking it is by far potentially the most catastrophic thing you could ever do to another human being is to be untrue to them. And be like, whoa, Jesus, John, aren't you? You're going a little over the deep end with that. Just hear me out. I'm a man of my word. And if I say I'm going to do something for Doug White, I'm going to do it. If I tell Nicole on March 10th, 1995, that I am going to be your husband, for better or for worse, I'm going to commit to you, then that's what I do. There's no fucking clause at the end that says, well, if you don't address and you're not good at conversations, you're allowed to do this. And so I violated that trust. And I didn't have to. I took the fucking easy way out again. Instead of having a tough conversation, instead of having any conversation, Doug, I said, you know what? This will be easier. And you know what? I'll use the affair as this stopgap measure. I'm gonna go with this woman, and while that's going on, I'll work on my life with Nicole, and then when my life with Nicole gets back on track, I'll stop the relationship with this other woman. That's the other lie you tell yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's impossible to do both things at the same time. And so, like, Nicole never threw me out of the house, Doug. Like, I had a front row seat for the impact of that decision that I made.
Wow.
I'd sleep on the couch, and Nicole would get up out of bed. I'd go to the bed before Brianna would wake up. So we would try to promote this facade of a normal family for our daughter. But I saw every day, Doug, the pain that I had caused Nicole. Nicole didn't do anything, man. There's nothing that she did that I could have rationalized or justified. Well, this is what you get. I mean, that's kind of bullshit. Curled in the fetal position, man, every day sobbing because of what I did, because I confided in another woman instead of confiding in her, my issues.
Yeah.
You want to talk about betrayal?
That's a big one.
It's fucking betrayal. And so, and we do it all the time, Doug. When you go to another woman to discuss your wife because you don't know how to approach your wife with it, that's fucking bullshit. You're going to talk to the other woman to get some attention and some recognition. And we do it all the time. And then next thing you know, we're balls deep in that other woman 2 weeks later. And we're scratching our heads wondering how this happened. Right? We first betray on an emotional level.
Mm-hmm.
Sending a text message, a little flirtatious, nothing crazy. Maybe it's a coworker and we've been through a traumatic incident together and we're just, checking on each other. Do you know how crazy this dynamic is, Doug? Do you know after 9/11, NYPD and NYFD assigned liaisons to the families that lost loved ones on 9/11?
I knew that. Yeah.
Do you know what happened in a fair majority of those cases?
Yeah. I know what you're getting ready to say.
They left their families and remarried the people that they were
Mm-hmm.
emotional support for. Not making it up. It's a real psychological situation that takes place, right? So I step out on my wife, and I do so, and I share with another woman all the things I should have been saying to my wife the whole time. It wasn't until, I mean, obviously you get caught. There's no world that exists where you can have an affair and you don't get caught. You horrible, because not only did I step out on my wife, I stepped out on my daughter.
Yeah.
You don't think about that. I stepped out on my in-laws. They loved me like a son. my parents, my friends, the couples that I broke everyone's trust. And now I got to get it back. And it's just the shame, the shame that I felt and the guilt. Almost killed myself over it. And I don't know how that's supposed to work, how 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 you atone if you're not here. I know I was tired, bro. I know I was fucking exhausted, man. Um, so much of it makes sense now. Like I had a brain that wasn't working, right? I was going on 2, 3 hours of sleep a day. Um, over 6, 7 months.
I can relate.
Yeah. And so where you go, well, this is rational thought has left the building. You've got that amygdala hijack. You can't make a good decision to save yourself, literally. And it's just there's nobody else to blame. Taking ownership is one thing, but when like we're not talking about time management, man. We're not like, oh, I need to get better at,
Yeah.
uh watching what I eat. This for me, this was a betrayal of epic proportion that I didn't know if I was going to be able to recover from. And going to counseling, being able to say the things in front of a therapist that I could never say to Nicole one on one was eye opening. And it's just and everything kind of goes back to Mrs. Kelly because in counseling, she says to me in front of the therapist, um, I've got to own my 1%. I'm like, what are we doing? She said, because I'm in a relationship with you, because it's you and me, I bear some responsibility for its health. It's not 50-50. It can be 99% your fault and 1% mine, but I got to own my 1%. And I'm willing to do that. I said, holy shit. She goes, maybe there's some things that I could have done better. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to grow. This is Mrs. Kelly talking, my best friend.
Yeah.
I go, fuck. If the roles were reversed, could I let that go, man? Could I be man enough? Could I be a man? Could I love her enough to let that go? I don't fuck. To this day, I'd love to tell you, Doug, pound on my chest. We get through anything. I don't fucking know. I don't know if I could.
John
And
Kelly then in that time and space? No, absolutely
probably
not.
not.
Mm-mm.
Right. And so she this is the thing, and I don't want to belabor this point, Doug. She 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 showed me what love was. She loved me at a time in my life when I gave her absolutely no reason to do so. See, that's love. We got it confused with some other stuff, man. Um, she loved me at a time in my life when I gave her no reason to do so. And so that for me was life altering. It was life altering. So to answer your question, that was the hardest chapter in the book to write. Everything else was filler, bro.
I mean, to write stuff like that, you got to sit with that stuff, and you've got to figure out what all of it means, and that's a difficult thing to do. But moving beyond that, and I know it's something that's still emotional to you, and
You know what, Doug? It has to be.
no, it does.
It has to be because I think if we're being real, um, there isn't a day that goes. See, this is the other thing, man. You want to talk about gratitude? She's giving me a reason to be grateful.
Yeah, every day. Every day you wake up and get to see
Every
your
day I
face.
wake up, I take Mr. Wallace. Everybody's got a Mrs. Kelly, Mr. Wallace. What the fuck's going on? I got a bull mastiff, Mr. Wallace. He's the slowest dog in the world, man. But if he catches you, you're done. Like, don't run down an alley that doesn't have an exit, because by the when he finally walks down the alley and gets you, he might lick you to death. But so I take Mr. Wallace out every morning and we go for a walk and I talk to God. And the first words out of my mouth every morning are, thank you for giving me the gift of waking up next to my Nicole. And then I go along my walk and I continue to thank God for a whole bunch of things, a whole litany of things. But that's the first thing, man, because she's the reason why I'm here, and she's also the reason why I wasn't here. Yeah. Which is kind of that it's a crazy the dichotomy of that. Like, it's not lost on me that she's the reason why I'm alive, and she's also the reason why I almost killed myself. I don't know, man. It's just nobody said it was going to be easy, man.
No. And if they did, they were lying. Yeah, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago that I talked to you. I called you wanting some advice, which is not rare. But I told you I'm trying to figure this all out. What's next? And he told me, hey, do this, do that. These are the steps you take and all that stuff. And I said, John, I just I built my house in this place for so many years, and I've grown past that now. But I know that I'm going to have to retell some of that story, and like your most recent episode with Nick Lavery. Hey, I know you were injured, and these are the 3 days you were injured. They're all remarkable stories, but you've told us 1,000 times. So I want to know when you woke up in Walter Reed. Where's the growth? Where's the win here? So I thought that was wonderful, and it got me to thinking, and that's what started our call. And I was like, man, I want to talk about the wins. How do you talk about self-inflicted wounds, the things that you've been through? It just the A's, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah.
And I asked you, how do you do that for 2, 4, or 8 hours during a conference, or get up and get a keynote and bear every bit of yourself? And how do you switch back from that, breaking yourself down and building yourself back? And so my question now is, and you answered this for me, but for anybody else who's looking for the answer to this reason, how do you own and atone, grow from, and then recount that story without the shame of the guilt that you had when you first did it? Is it like a level of healing that you're beyond it and it just gets less and less each time? Or is it the same each time, but you just get better at managing that feeling?
Yeah, man.
That's the key.
Listen, time does not heal all wounds. Whoever said that's full of shit. Time may heal some superficial wounds, but deep wounds never heal. That's my John Kelly's philosophy, adopt it or not. But that doesn't mean you can't grow. It's just going to be there. So when I talk, I go back, man. I go back to that night. I go back to those times, and it's the recovery is quicker though. I forgive myself quicker. I think if you're anybody who's ever going to talk about anything in their lives that has carved a little rut in their soul, I don't know how you genuinely discuss those events and not have it emotionally impact you. I, and it be real. I just I don't know that that's possible. Um, but I think that the key for me is I know this isn't. I'm not doing this because I like beating myself up and I like telling shameful stories about myself in front of complete strangers. I don't get off on that. It's not some weird fetish that I developed over the years. I know that you hearing this story is going to allow you to show yourself some grace. I know that you hearing this story is going to allow you to process some things in your life from a different lens and add value to your life and maybe help you make some better decisions and recalibrate and refocus. And I know that you hearing this story and adopting some of the skill sets and tools that I present during this presentation that I do, I know that that's going to make you a better human being. And so that brief period of pain that I have to relive is worth it for you to be a better version of you being the person in the audience. And so if it takes me a couple of hours to get back to being John, to forgive myself, um, then then so be it, man. That's the price of admission if we're gonna be in this game. If this is gonna be the mission, which is to add value to other people's lives. And the way that we do that sometimes is through storytelling and not pounding our chest and saying, look how awesome I am, but by saying, look how I failed, look how I've hurt. But that doesn't have to be the end of the story. You can do things, you can have tough conversations, you can develop and be a better human being. And this is how you do that. And so
That's the gift. That's
that
the
is,
gift that you give to people.
yeah. And if that doesn't happen, then it's all for naught, man. So that's what makes, because my Nicole had said to me, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, you are, she goes, I hate seeing you like this. And I gave her a glimpse, man, into my world. I showed her some emails. I showed her some texts. I showed her some letters that people have written. I let her poke her head in the room for 5 minutes and feel the power. She goes, I'll never ask you again. I get it now. And she understands that you're just a conduit, man. You're just a way through you, people get to change. And that's the gift. That we want to give people is an ability to look at the same situation that they've been looking at for a year and look at it from a different perspective and um to understand how you love yourself and what that looks like. And it's just it's such a mixed bag, bro, that like something really special happens in that room, and it happens for different people on different topics that are in different stages in their life. Um, who's the woman who comes up to me that she had to wrestle a gun from her husband last week because he was going to kill himself over infidelity? And you have that conversation. And you realize now that that's what and they're both sitting in your class, and you get to actually physically grab both of them and say, like, you guys are going to get through this. Like, you need to get through this and have it fucking mean something. How did you know that was going to happen? You had no idea it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's the universe bringing people together for good, right? All the things that had to happen for the three of us to be there that day.
Yeah, no, it's huge, man. There's no accidents.
Right.
There's no
And so you
coincidence.
go,
There's no accidents.
man, there's something guiding this
Mhm.
this direction. When a young girl who had a miscarriage texted me during my presentation, how do I love myself again? I feel like this is my fault. And so I send her a text. Hey, I suck at texting. I go, can we talk? Like, can I meet you? I'm done with my presentation. I'm sitting in the lobby. Everybody's gone except this one girl. Young girl. She don't have a dad. She's my Brianna's age. And we sat and we talked. And for an hour, this is going to sound corny, for an hour, I was her dad. I was a strong male figure that she needed in her life at that moment to give her some guidance and direction. That's not my doing, man. God put us together in that room, right? Because that's what she needed. It's just it's not once, Doug. Every single time. I had a veteran. CAG,
Mhm.
heavy hitter, man,
Oh yeah.
heavy hitter, and he just was like, I grabbed him at the end, and we talked and we sat for hours, and we figured some shit out. He put me in his phone as brother.
That's not that's not
How
something
do
that
you
happens.
explain this, Doug?
Yeah,
You
no,
can't,
I'm with you,
man.
dude.
You can't. And so that's the mission, man. The mission is impacting and adding value to people's lives, man, in a way that they don't even see coming.
You know, it's I believe that, and I was warned. Not warned. I was cautioned that that was going to happen. That when you start talking and you step out into the light and start doing these things, that people are, it's a big power and it's a big responsibility, and
Yeah,
people are going to rely on you, and you're going to have an impact on people that you'll never know. But there's 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000, whatever the ratio is. Somebody's going to reach out to you and say, "Hey, this hit me, and this is where it hit me." And it starts conversations, which I think is important about this. You have to start the conversations because, guys, men like you and I, we don't have these conversations.
no, I'm forced to
We're not
have
two
them, right?
dudes. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
I've
forced to
got no
have them.
choice. I've got no choice. I've learned, and I want to share with you what I've learned, because there is a better way to live. But I will tell you, to your point, and going back to the CAG thing, um, my two bosses when I went back on active duty on 9/11, they were both Delta Sergeant Majors. I mean, they've been in everything from the invasion of frickin' Panama to mid to late Afghanistan and everything in between. When I was on Alone and Unafraid podcast, my two buddies, they had me on their podcast. It was my first time on a podcast.
I gotcha.
It was late June or early July of just 2024. Before every bit of this kicked off, I had what I thought was a manuscript. I didn't even have a book yet. I just had a bunch of thoughts and feelings. And my boss heard it and he called me and he's like, "Bro, how'd you do that?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'd rather go back to Afghanistan than to do what you just did, to talk
Yeah.
about your feelings and to bear it like that." And I said, "Hey man, I've got a manuscript. I think that's what they call it, a manuscript. Let me email it to you to see what you think." And I did. And that started a conversation. He started sending me short stories that he wrote when he started his CBT. And I mean, it's short stories about, hey, here was what happened during the invasion of Panama. Here's what happened, during Task Force Ranger at, Black Hawk Down. Here's
Yeah.
the funerals for my mates when we came back. I mean, all of these short stories, these thoughtful, deep things. And I'm like, man, I always knew that this was a complex human being. I mean, just like he was a big brother to all of us. I mean,
Sure.
he's what we all wanted to be. And I had deeper conversations with him because I shared my story and I found out more about him in the period of 2 months than I had in the 23 previous years.
Isn't that insane?
And that's happened with both of them. I heard about stories, things that, um, just thoughts and feelings and just being real and honest with each other, that things that, this is part of my journey, and it's just because you've been real. So
It really it gives permission to
it
people
does.
just to be human, man,
It
and
does,
to
and I think about that, and I think to myself, who am I to give somebody else permission? That kinda seems arrogant to me to think that me telling my story is gonna give somebody else permission, but I think it gives them the space to know that they're safe. Like, "Hey, this guy just gave up the keys to the kingdom, man. He laid it all out there, so let me put a little something on that pile."
right. Yeah, and
And I think
you've
it's awesome,
shown
man.
them that actually you can do that and still be respected, still be an alpha, still be somebody that's held in high regard. Still you can be real, you can share, um, and it doesn't come at a detriment to your own being.
No, it doesn't. I think I should have given this disclaimer at the beginning of this episode by saying that while you are the law enforcement life coach, John Kelly, and all of the things you are not my coach. Not that I couldn't use a coach, but you are not a paid coach for me. I want to make that very clear, that when I talk about my feelings for you, that everybody listening to this, and you know this, so this is for everybody listening, that I don't pay you to have these conversations with me. You have these conversations with me.
You're a friend.
That's it. You have these conversations with me, like I said in the very beginning, because you want to see other people succeed for the sheer point of them succeeding. And
Can
John,
can I
you're
can
a
I say
gentleman for
something,
that.
Doug?
Yeah, go for it.
I don't so you're funny, like, yeah, like when people call me, I don't charge them. First responder calls me, he's in pain, he's not sure what to do, he doesn't know whether to go left or right, should or go blind. Uh, I give him an hour. I go, listen, if we can't figure this shit out in an hour, two grown men with some experience, I go, we're in trouble. I said, so let's figure this out together. Um, it's not a winning recipe for a business. Um, but what I have found is that it's the recipe that I can sleep with.
Yeah. No, we
You
we
know,
talked about this a couple of calls ago, man. If you've stolen the answers to the test, or
yeah,
they fall off a truck,
yeah.
and you got
However it
the you
happened, man.
yeah, you got the carbon copies, you're
Yeah,
kind of an asshole if you charge people. And
yeah.
that's
No,
the way I
it's
feel too. And I'm so grateful that we were introduced, and I've been able to share
absolutely, man.
all of this time with you, especially this. But before we close up, man, what's the one thing you would say to somebody listening to John Kelly right now? What's the first step?
First step, the first step in you growing. Um, if we don't acknowledge there's a problem, there's nothing to fix, right? So, like that acknowledging part, like, hey, and it's hard for us, especially first responders, because we're not really adept at asking for help. We're not we're the people that get called to fix problems. We don't call people to help fix us. Um, so like that first step is you just looking in the mirror, asking some tough questions, and then not being afraid of the answers. And
That's
that's
it.
okay, man, because we all have shit. John Kelly, 58-year-old John Kelly still has shit, man. Everybody's a work in progress. This is life. There is no destination, man. You don't ever arrive. It's constant, never-ending self-improvement, one day better than the next. And it's that's the journey, man. And so um, don't be afraid to love yourself. Stop stop saying things about yourself that if somebody else said, you'd punch them in the mouth. Right? Right? Love yourself, man. Show yourself some grace. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. Nobody ever showed you, told you. We're all a work in progress. And at the end of the day, man, if we could just love love and care a little bit more for ourselves and each other, I think you'd see the majority of our problems go away. But for whatever reason, man, that seems to be at times a very difficult ask.
I think we should all work on figuring that out.
Yeah,
Where can everybody find you, John? I'm going to have all your stuff in there
oh, thanks.
but where can everybody find you?
Um, so like the best way, man, is the website. It's got links to my podcast and to to emails and all that. lawenforcementlifecoach.com. It's probably the best way. And I'd be remiss, Doug. I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on your show. And I love I genuinely love our conversations. And like when I see a text, I'm excited to see what the rest of that text says that I can't see on the preview screen, man.
I'm the
I
misguided little
really.
brother. That's why.
Oh man, it's nice. It's nice to be not blowing smoke, man. It's just nice to be in a space on a mission with people that get it and that I think that understand the weight of what it is that we do and the importance of getting it right. And you're doing all those things, man. And so I'm just very grateful that we're in this thing together, man.
I appreciate you, John. And I should have had you on earlier, but as I told you, I was waiting for me to get bigger and more important. So I didn't want to wait another 2 or 3 years. I figured I'd go ahead and knock it out now.
Yeah, I'm glad you finally got your head out of your ass.
I appreciate you, brother. And we will see you next time.
Thank you, brother.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening to Tell This Story. John Kelly didn't just survive his own self-inflicted wounds. He made a blueprint for the rest of us. The story isn't about perfection. It's about ownership, redemption, and the freedom that comes when we stop hiding and start healing. If something in today's conversation hit home for you, reach out. Get the book, Surviving Self-Inflicted Wounds. Share this episode, or just start talking to each other. You can find John's work, his podcast, coaching, and his book at lawenforcementlifecoach.com. If this podcast helps you feel seen, supported, or understood, do us a favor. Leave a review and send it to somebody who needs it. And if you haven't yet, grab your own copy of Hiding in Plain Sight, The Truth About Trauma, Service, and the Way Forward. It's not just my story. It's a bridge, one that connects silence to understanding and service to healing. Subscribe here, leave a review, and keep showing up for yourself, for your family, and for the life you deserve. We can be stronger than before together.